Rotary has been heavily involved in all sorts of peacebuilding activities almost since its inception 115 years ago. After the First World War, the focus of Rotary became very much, how can we prevent another terrible occurrence like that from happening? And in 1921, 100 years ago, Rotary a resolution calling on Rotarians to promote international understanding, goodwill and peace. And those words, international understanding, goodwill and peace, have underlined our entire life ever since then. And they are the foundation of the Rotary Foundation. They are enshrined in our official object. And after that, the peace focus on Rotary increased very significantly. In 1918, there were 416 Rotary clubs. 3 years later, there were 1,000. In fact, club number 1,000 was the Rotary Club of York. 4 years later, we doubled in number. By 1935, we had 4,000 clubs. 1939, we had 5,000 clubs. 150,000 Rotarians all around the world. Rotary had become a massive worldwide organization with a strong focus on peace. As a result of that, we were invited by the officials in the cabinets of Prime Minister Churchill and President Truman to work alongside officials of China, the Soviet Union, the United States, and the United Kingdom to begin the process of drafting what would become the Charter of the United Nations. After the Charter was formed, we continued our association with the UN, and we now have a very active Rotary representative network. We have appointed representatives to many of the UN organs and other key international organizations around the world, all of which are concerned with promoting the areas of focus that Rotary has focused on, which include peace and conflict resolution, and in many other areas. We have developed a range of peace-building initiatives, the Rotary Peace Center program, the Rotary Action for Peace. We've partnered with peace-building NGOs. Truly, peace-building is in our DNA.
What a wonderful trail of an enormous amount of history in a very short space of time there, Peter. So thank you for making that so succinct. And I'd love to, I think Luke and I would love to explore that a little bit more and delve into it. So, you know, you mentioned that we were there as an instrumental role at the beginning of the formation of the United Nations, which was a hell of a privilege. And currently, of course, the United Nations has the Sustainable Development Goals, which are very closely aligned to the work that Rotary does. So could you tell us a little bit more about those alignments?
Yes, with pleasure. If I can just add two more quick anecdotes.
Yes.
1940, the Rotary International Convention was held in Havana, Cuba. And at that convention, we adopted a resolution calling, amongst other things, for respect for human rights. Those respect for human rights had never before entered into the international vocabulary. That became the basis for the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, signed in 1948, perhaps one of the most significant documents signed last century. 2 years later, in London, a number of senior Rotarians met. They were concerned about the impact of the Second World War on education, scientific research, cultural norms and monuments. They passed a resolution which led a few years later to the formation of UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. So we have such a close association with the United Nations, and it continued. After the Millennium Development Goals were developed in 2000, Rotary's areas of focus aligned very closely with some of those areas of focus. And when they were replaced by the Sustainable Development Goals in 2015, once again, our goals, broad areas of focus, very much are consistent with some of the more detailed SDGs. And we're moving, as we move along each of the areas of focus, I think we'll see even greater alignment moving forward. One
more question, then I'll hand it back to you, Luke. So, Peter, I think that is the it is wonderful to think how focused the work of Rotary is. And clearly Together Talks is an initiative of Rotary Great Britain and Ireland, but we also hope to have others joining us who are non-Rotarians at the moment. And I think just to a wider audience generally, it's often common to think of peace being the absence of just war or conflict. And therefore it's just way too big a topic to actually come to a point where you can believe you can make a difference. So how would you address that specifically to any individual who's listening today in terms of how they can contribute to what peace is beyond just the absence of war?
Well, Rotary is an enormous organization. Sometimes we tend to think of local clubs meeting locally, old white-haired men having a weekly lunch or a weekly dinner. Rotary is much, much more than that. We have many, many initiatives amongst our 1.2 million members spread across 200 countries and jurisdictions. There are many ways for individual Rotarians to promote peace building, both locally and internationally. As I think we all agree, conflict tends to start in local communities. So we need to devise solutions to those conflicts locally. And what better organization to engage in working on overcoming local conflicts but Rotary? We are a community-based organization with some 36,000 Rotary clubs around the world. And I believe Rotarians have not only the capability, but the responsibility to help to overcome some of the partisan divide and the polarization and the conflicts that exist all around the world. We have the resources, we have the reputation, we have the ability, and we are well placed locally to make a major impact in terms of local community partisan conflicts.
I think we sometimes use the term Rotarians as generally, but we should make sure it's clear that that includes the Rotary Act as well, right, Peter?
Very much so.
And Luke.
And we are just so delighted that Rotary Actors is now a full partner with Rotary. Rotary Actors are becoming engaged in all levels of the organization, leadership levels, and they bring enormous energy, enthusiasm, technological expertise, and the same passion and the same desire for peace as other Rotarians. So
yes.
Actors going forward will be a key component of Rotary's overall contribution to peace building.
Right, Luke, over to you.
Absolutely. So obviously peace itself can be quite a broad spectrum. As you've said before, it can turn into a bit of a semantics game trying to define it. You said that you avoid using the word peace and instead choose the word peace building to define the kind of work that you do. How would you kind of explain peace building to other people, and how would you encourage them to get involved with it?
Good question. Thank you, Luke. Yes, I think one can debate what is meant by peace, never really come to any satisfactory conclusion. It means different things to different people in different cultures and different backgrounds. But I think there's a more universal understanding of the concept of peace building. And that's why I like to think of Rotary as a peace building organization. And there are many ways that Rotary has been involved in peace building. I've mentioned our outreach to the United Nations. That's a very considerable component in our overall peace building strategy. We have partnered with 7 or 8 of the key UN agencies, and we meet on a regular basis with those agencies, and we're developing programs, collaborations between those organizations in clubs and districts around the world. We've developed the Rotary Peace Center program. We have a Rotary Action Group for Peace. There's a police academy, peace workshops, peace symposia, you name it. There are many ways in which individual Rotarians can engage in a different peace building dimension. I'm particularly keen on the Rotary Peace Center program. I chaired that committee for 3 years. That, I think, is the Rolls Royce of Rotary's educational priorities. We established this program early this century, We graduate over 100 students a year. We now have over 1,400 Peace Fellows around the world. These are the creme de la creme of young peace education experts. And I think long after we've eradicated polio, which is our #1 external priority, the Rotary Peace Centre program may well become Rotary's most enduring legacy to the rest of the world.
Super, thank you, Peter. We actually had the pleasure of meeting 2 Peace Fellows last season, Lauren and Wisdom, one fellow from the USA and one from Ghana. And it struck us as very interesting that the work that you do specifically within the Peace Fellowship Centres, it involves doing so much work and not really ever seeing the faces or knowing the names of the people that you're helping, which obviously is so much rooted into the ethos of being a Rotarian and a Rotaractor. What does that make you think about when you know that you've helped so many people, but you'll probably never actually see them?
Well, you said it very well, Luke. Rotary reaches out. That's what we do through our Rotary Foundation programs, our global grants, our district grants. We have hundreds of projects at any one point in time all over the world involving international collaborations. So I think that's the key part of what Rotary does. We reach out. We may never get to meet the people who are the beneficiaries of our reaching out. We may never get to see the projects that we support, but still we reach out. And the ripple effect, week after week, year after year, of Rotarians reaching out, providing polio drops, wheelchairs, water wells, scholarships, all manner of humanitarian equipment, brings peace and comfort and security to millions of people around the world. And that's one of the reasons why I'm very proud to be a Rotarian, and I'm very grateful to all those in the Rotary world who share that perspective and that desire each year to reach out to those more in need.
Peter, thank you. So, I know that you have an enormous passion for the Peace Centres, and of course, you and I and several other people know intimately what that means, but there might be some people out there that would love to know a little bit more about not only where the Peace Centres are, but the fact that we're still growing and what that looks like. So could you embellish that a little bit more, please?
Yes, indeed. Well, I think the Rotary Peace Centre program, as I said before, is a terrific program. It was started, the first intake was in 2002. Rotary partnered with 6 universities around the world, each of which had a world-renowned reputation for their peace and conflict curriculum. This included University of Bradford in England, University of Queensland in Brisbane, Australia, National Christian University in Tokyo, Japan, the University of Uppsala in Sweden, and Duke University, University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, United States. Subsequently, we developed, those universities offer a 2-year master's program. We then developed what is now a 1-year professional development certificate program in 2 centres. The first is in Bangkok, Thailand, at Chulalongkorn University, and the second is opening this month at Makerere University in Uganda, Kampala, Uganda. Each year, each of the master's schools take 100 students, 10 each. That's 60 to each of the 6 master's centres, and the professional development programs are taking 40 each year. Some of the graduates of the program are now holding positions of considerable responsibility in the US State Department, in the United Nations, in the World Bank, in all other parts of the world. As I said before, we have over 1,400 graduates doing amazing work in every part of the world, in every sector. In order to qualify for the program, you have to have a college degree and at least 3 years post-college experience in a peace-related sector. So this is not a program for young people who haven't quite decided what to do in life, so let's go back to university for a few more years. This is for people who are really dedicated to peace building. And the quality each year of the applicants, each year we are amazed by the number we receive. We go through a very elaborate selection process. It's a very competitive program, and we are thrilled with the results so far. The program is funded by contributions from Rotarians. It's at no cost to clubs or districts. It's a very generous scholarship. It covers all expenses, including a fully paid internship program at the master's level between year 1 and year 2. So we have some wonderful Peace Fellows. If you have an opportunity to attend a Rotary Club meeting where the speaker is a Peace Fellow, I encourage you to do so. You'll be amazed at the caliber of the students that we are now working with as Rotary Peace Fellows.
So I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, I'll never forget the privilege I had of serving on one of those selection committees at the district level, and how hard it was to discern, you know, between such valid passion and different angles. And actually one of the people I actually did get to interview was Lauren Cafaro, who went to Bradford here in England, and so we connected ultimately as well. So, and some of those stories, I know Lauren used a lot about her theatrical background and using theatre in the role of peace. So could you just tell us an example of one of the amazing scholar stories that you've heard that maybe isn't so obvious to everyone, and how we work with peace, Peter?
Yes, it's interesting. Many of the Peace Fellows come with very varied backgrounds. I remember we've had several who have a journalistic background. They've spent some time overseas working for the international cable operator, CNN or MSNBC. We've had a number with a law enforcement background. We've had some from the military. We've had, of course, a fair share of lawyers. We've had a lot of doctors. We've had people in all walks of life, and that I think is one of the greatest aspects. When the 10 scholars come together for a 2-year program, this is an incredibly bonding, unifying experience. They all have very rich backgrounds and history in their countries. Some have been actively involved in peace NGOs. The diversity is, I think, one of the most attractive features. And they develop lifelong friendships. We are developing, dare I say it, an army of Rotary Peace Fellows. And each year, the army just gets stronger and better and bigger. And I think the Rotary Peace Fellowship Program is the world's largest, and I venture to suggest the most prestigious, graduate peace building scholarship available. So I encourage those of you who are listening to consider this program. It is competitive, but we are looking for the very best, and they have become wonderful ambassadors for their country and for Rotary International.
Fantastic. Over to you, Luke.
Great, thank you, Peter. So yeah, a question from me. It can be quite easy to assume that everyone is on board in supporting initiatives like peace and peace building. However, those of us who work within the peace industry know that it's not as easy as that. And as a young person and a Rotarian who's often been very involved with peace and peace building initiatives, sometimes I've been met, I'm sure others have been, with negative responses, even controversy, when you're working on peace projects, whether it may be supporting things like Hiroshima, Black Lives Matter, etc. And given that Rotary is a non-political organization, but so many of these deep-rooted peace-building issues are in politics, what kind of advice do you give to, firstly, people who are non-supportive, but secondly, to those who want to try and navigate those difficult conversations and still support them?
Well, I have to react to difficult conversations, and we are doing that increasingly. Rotary adopted a very broad diversity, equity, and inclusion statement last year. We are in the process of developing recommendations for Rotary worldwide to encourage and promote discussion of DEI issues. We should not shy away from difficult questions. We are a potentially powerful force for good in society. That doesn't mean that we need to take very political stands on some activities which are very political. Rotary prides itself on being non-political and non-religious, but sometimes the boundary between what is political and what is not political is not very clear, and boundary means different things to different people. So I would encourage both non-Rotarians and Rotarians to consider the issues that come before them, and if they engage constructively and meaningfully in discussions on topics which are a little bit sensitive, so be it. We need to have the courage of our convictions. We need to be forthright in expressing our views without becoming unduly confrontational in what we promote.
So true. Wise words, Peter. You know, so often conflict comes from just not understanding first, seeking to understand each other. And so much of our work in Rotary is done on that at a local level. As you said right at the beginning, conflict starts in our local communities, so the solutions need to start there. Can you talk to us a little bit more about examples of peace building projects that some of our local Rotarians in communities can do right in their own backyards?
Right, well, perhaps this is a good opportunity for me to promote an initiative which I'm rolling out in my own part of the world. As a director of Rotary International, I oversee some 70,000 Rotarians, 1,800 Rotary clubs from the north of Pennsylvania down through the east coast of the United States, all of the Caribbean, and 3 countries in South America. And I've long felt, as I said before, that Rotarians have an ability to promote peace and a responsibility to promote peace. Outside of Rotary, my other passion in life has been Outward Bound. And I'm sure there are many in the audience who are familiar with Outward Bound. I did an Outward Bound course in New Zealand when I was 20. I became engaged in the administration of Outward Bound, and I rose up through the ranks, and eventually I became the chairman of Outward Bound International, reporting directly to the patron of Outward Bound at the time, His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh. So I've always wanted to find a way to bring Outward Bound and Rotary together. And early this year, with the help of 2 wonderful Peace Fellows, I've done just that. One of the Peace Fellows is the former Chief Executive of Outward Bound Peacebuilding, and the other is the Chief Executive of New Gen Peace Builders, which is a very active peacebuilding NGO in the United States. And we're developing what we're calling Youth and Peace in Action, engaging 100,000 young community peace builders throughout zones 33 and 34. And the idea is to work with Interact clubs. We have hundreds of Interact clubs in our part of the world, and engage with them and other high school students in a range of community peace building activities. We're getting a lot of exciting feedback. We've raised quite a lot of money for this initiative. We'll be rolling it out on the 1st of July next year. I'm happy to provide more detail after the call. We're excited. I've been talking with some of my peace building colleagues in the United Kingdom about this, and also interested. So that's one example. And there are many examples of peace building initiatives. In England, you have Peace Jam, you have peace hubs. There are a lot of peace and education initiatives all around the world. And I think that's an area where Rotarians are very strong in. We all want peace. We all believe in education. We are a very youth-focused organization. So bringing Rotary and peace and youth together, to me, is just a natural outgrowth of Rotary's 115-year history. And I'm excited about this initiative and the many other similar initiatives all around the Rotary world.
Well, Luke has a lot of experience in that field too, don't you, Luke?
Yes, yeah, very involved in Peace Jam as well, have been for the last 6 years, and Rotary and Peace Jam, as well as the other organizations and initiatives you mentioned, they collaborate so well together. They really do work together well. We have a question sent in here by someone who's watching that just says, What one action can each of us take personally to help us make our world a more peaceful place?
Well, one thing I suggest, Rotary has partnered with two of the world's leading peace-related NGOs. One is Mediators Beyond Borders, very actively involved in mediation, and many Rotary Peace Fellows are members of Mediators Beyond Borders. The second is the Institute for Economics and Peace, IEP. This is responsible for the Global Peace Index. They've done a lot of research on the peaceability of nations, and they have developed a program for which anybody can go online. It's a 3-hour course. You complete this program, you learn to become a peace builder, you get a certificate to say that you've qualified, and there are many practical suggestions in the course of that program for what you as an individual Rotarian can do in your communities, engaging with law enforcement, engaging with the faith community, engaging with civic leaders. There are many other organizations in all our communities, in all parts of the world, that have broadly similar objectives. They're wanting to provide food and shelter, environmentally oriented, literacy oriented. All of them have a indirectly or directly a peace objective. And that's where Rotary is so good, because we have such a broad, we are engaged in so many of these areas of focus, and we have the resources to work with communities to make a difference. So the first step I would suggest is to go online to the program. It's under the Institute for Economics and Peace, and that will provide, as I said, practical suggestions on what you can do individually.
Super. And just one last quick one from me, Peter, a bit of a personal question for you. As someone who works in the sort of peace world, you know, and looking at the state that the world is in today, it can be quite easy to turn on the news and feel a sense of apathy instead of hope for peace building itself. How do you what ways do you find, you know, how do you ground yourself when you're feeling a little bit of apathy, when you're thinking, you know, is it even worth doing this at all? You know, how do you kind of center yourself, and what advice would you give to people in those positions?
Well, I think to be honest, I have such faith in Rotaractors and youth generally. Over the last few years, I've had more and more contact with Rotaractors in both my part of the world and other parts of the world. And I'm always enormously impressed with the caliber of the contributions, the events that they arrange. And I recall myself 40 or 50 years ago being the same age as a Rotaractor and being quite ambitious, perhaps a bit naive, and perhaps a bit altruistic, but very keen to make a difference. So I just think the sooner we engage Rotaractors in particular, engage them at all levels of leadership in the organization, engage them proactively in collaboration with Rotary clubs, I think the future is quite bright. There are a lot of great things happening in Rotary. We are about to have our first female president. That's going to have an amazing impact. We've now introduced environment as an area of focus. Rotaractors have been elevated. Never has there been a more important time for Rotary and Rotarians. This is the time that we can make a difference. And although it's very tragic what has happened as a result of the pandemic has opened up enormous opportunities for connectivity all around the world. Rotarians now have proved very innovative, very creative. We're doing lots of exciting things. So I'm optimistic about the future. Yes, we all read bad reports, but nevertheless, I think the future is still pretty bright.
Thank you.
Well, it may not come as a huge surprise to a lot of people, but I too share that enthusiasm, Peter. And I feel that this connectivity, this enhanced connectivity that we've discovered, which of course was available to us before the pandemic, but we've now somehow finally harnessed it, because sometimes it takes that little bit of extra push to get off our normal behavior. Let's talk about the program of inter-country committees and their role in peace building, and how much that can now take on a whole new meaning in this virtual environment.
Well, that's a great example of the internationality of Rotary. There are some 300 inter-country committees. The first was a committee between France and Germany, started after the war. And we now have USA, Russia, all manner of inter-country committees. And that's one of the great things that Rotarians bring to the world. The internationality. We have youth exchange, we have Rotary scholarships all around the world. Our Rotary Foundation is premised on clubs in one part of the world partnering with clubs in another part of the world to do projects. So the inter-country committees, I think, are a fabulous example of how Rotarians can meet each other, can share experiences, can develop projects, can develop solutions. It's all part of the new interconnectedness that we now have. And in the last 12 months, I think I've been amazed, and Rotary leaders generally have been amazed at how many new opportunities this has given. The fact that I'm talking to you today from Washington, DC, I've given presentations to clubs in Russia, in Hong Kong, in Norway, in Lebanon, in New Zealand. We're now meeting. It's very easy to meet, very easy to establish relationships. We're doing projects internationally. It's a whole new level of engagement. So as I say, I think the future is very bright for Rotary, and I'm just excited to be where I am at the moment. I would love to be 30 or 40 years younger, but it is what it is, and I'm enjoying my time in Rotary at this time, and I'm sure Nikki and Luke, you feel the same way.
100%. I just think there's so much choice out there, Peter, isn't there? And I mean, we've talked about peace centres, peace jam, peace symposiums, the Rotary Action Group for Peace, ICCs. There's so many, and if peace is ultimately the glue of what connects all of our areas of focus, really, because if the basic needs aren't met, then you can't have peace. So how do we get across this? Not over fragmenting the work we do, and coming more to focus the impact we have. What is your advice there?
Well, that is a challenge. The board did take a step 2 years ago. We've appointed a Rotary Peace Manager to coordinate the various peace initiatives in Rotary. We have one committee that raises money for peace activities. We have the committee that oversees the peace centres program. We have a committee that oversees alumni. And as you said, Nikki, they are a little bit disjointed. And one of the challenges for the board is to provide a more coordinated focus on peace building. It's coming, it's taking time. There are 1.2 million Rotarians, and there are 1.2 million opinions on everything in Rotary. So getting some consensus takes time, but I think we're moving in that direction. We share common core values. We share a vision. We share a mission statement. There may be differences in how Rotary is practiced in different parts of the world, but there's much more similarities and many more points of consensus.
Before we let you go, we would like to just ask you to share with us your 3 key takeaways that you'd like us all to act on.
Well, I really do think Rotarians should do what they can to promote peace, locally, regionally, nationally, internationally. Support the Rotary Peace Centre program. You can be a financial contributor. You can sponsor candidates. You could be a mentor. You can join a peace selection committee. Engage with the Rotary Foundation. All the work of the Rotary Foundation has a peace building dimension. So by contributing to the foundation, either financially or in terms of projects, again, you're making a significant contribution to peace building. And as I said before, the impact of the Rotary Foundation, the impact of what Rotarians do around the world contributes enormously, improving the international humanitarian community. I encourage Rotarians to reach out to local communities through their clubs, reach out to civic leaders. There are many activities in which Rotarians can engage. And I think you'll find communities are anxious to work alongside Rotarians as well.
Thank you so much, Peter. You've certainly given us so many amazing insights and some thought-provoking ideas. So whether we are Rotarians, Rotaractors, or people, guests here tonight for the first time hearing about this important piece work that we do and want to join and do that with us, which would be fantastic. So thank you for all of that, and take care. And we wish you all the very best. And we commit to you that you'll have a lot of people supporting your passion.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Peter.
Nikki. Thank you, Luke. I've enjoyed the session, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye, Peter.